Elon Musk's secret guardian angel, the nanny who saved his life. I still remember the moment I spotted her across the bustling marbled hall of the Tesla Gigafactory ribbon-cutting event, a slight stoop to her shoulders that carried the weight of decades, and a threadbare satchel slung over one arm. It was Rosa, my childhood next-door neighbor in Pretoria, the woman whose gentle hands tended to our overgrown garden, and who quietly whispered fevers away when I was a bedridden boy dreaming of rockets, and in that instant the chasm between her world, a lean existence supported by decades of menial labor, and mine, awash in headlines celebrating my fortunes, yawned open like an interstellar void. I barely recognized the resilience etched into the lines around her eyes, the determination that had seen her through two back-breaking jobs, one at the local sanitation plant and another as a home health aide, just so she could feed her grandchildren after her daughter fell ill. And I felt a sudden guilt that pulsed through my veins like unspent fuel, a reminder that wealth measured in billions can never fully account for the invisible debts owed to those who nurture our hopes. I invited her to sit with me at a quiet table, away from the cameras and the speechwriters, and watched her hands tremble as she accepted a cup of herbal tea. Turns out she still preferred the infusion she once brewed for me, a blend of rooibos and mint she claimed was stronger than any pharmaceutical tonic. Between sips, she asked after my mother's health, as though she'd just seen her yesterday instead of 30 years ago. That question sparked memories of a family secret I'd never fully unraveled. That my birth certificate had been altered. That between my mother's tears one night, when she thought I was asleep, and her frantic whispered calls to Rosa, there lay the strange gravity of another identity that had carried me forward. When I pressed her for the truth, her gaze drifted to the polished windows reflecting the desert landscape beyond, and she told me, in a voice both tender and laced with sorrow, that I was born 2 months premature, that my birth father, an entrepreneur from a neighboring township, had vanished when my mother's fortunes dwindled, and that Rosa had slipped into the hospital records the night I was wheeled into the NICU, listing herself as my emergency contact, an act that spared me from bureaucratic oblivion and sent me back home into my mother's arms. My chest tightened as I realized she had literally rewritten the narrative of my life, inserting herself as a guardian angel in the paperwork of destiny. And I found my breath hitching in a way I hadn't felt since watching the first Falcon Heavy launch, when the audio crackled and my heart lifted with those 3 striking booster rockets. I vowed then, right there in that quiet corner bathed in flickering chandelier light, that I would not let her sacrifices vanish into the footnotes of history, so I began to sketch out the blueprint for what would become the Stellar Care Collective, a network of community-backed residences, innovation hubs, and educational endowments designed to honor caregivers like Rosa by providing them with dignified housing, lifelong health care, and the opportunity to mentor the next generation of dreamers. Before the week was out, I found myself poring over legal filings with my SpaceX legal team in Hawthorne, drafting a governance structure that steered clear of corporate charity and instead empowered residents of Stellar Care homes to elect among themselves a council that would manage shared resources and partner with local schools so that elderly caregivers could teach art, science, and history in exchange for living stipends. No patronizing handouts, just mutual respect and genuine collaboration. I saw Rosa's eyes light up when I described how each home would feature a workshop filled with 3D printers, small rocket engine prototypes, and digital art stations so that residents could continue to create, to innovate, to stay vital, and she laughed, a bright, unguarded sound I'd almost forgotten existed, when I told her that the first residency program would be hosted at Boca Chica, Texas, alongside the Starship launch site, symbolizing how the guardians of our childhoods could dwell at the frontier of tomorrow. But the narrative didn't end with blueprints and board meetings. I also tracked down Rosa's grandnephew, David, a bright-eyed engineering student working 2 shifts at a diner to fund his education, and arranged a full scholarship for him through the Musk Academic Excellence Fund, with a direct mentorship channel to my own Neuralink team so that his research on adaptive brain-computer interfaces could flourish. As the weeks turned into months, I watched the first Stellar Care home rise from the brushlands near Brownsville, where reclaimed shipping containers metamorphosed into sunlit apartments, communal kitchens, and rooftop gardens tended by the caregivers themselves. And I felt a surge of pride, not for the number of rockets I'd launched, but for the lives I was helping relaunch. When we finally cut the ribbon for Stellar Care 1, the turnout surprised me. Dozens of former patients, neighbors, and caregivers who had once crossed my path in fleeting moments came to pay tribute, and Rosa stood at the center of the crowd, her eyes glistening, her frame straight with the knowledge that her quiet act of love had rippled outward to reshape my legacy. And perhaps, in time, the way the world honors those who care for its children. I spoke then about the lessons I'd learned, not about engineering efficiency or market disruption, but about the power of small, consistent acts of kindness to shape entire lifetimes, reminding everyone that for all our lofty ambitions, we remain tethered to the simple truth that no dreamer becomes who they are without someone who believed in them first. As cameras flashed and confetti drifted like stardust around us, I reached for Rosa's hand and held it for a moment longer than protocol demanded, because no amount of press or prestige mattered as much as the quiet gravity of her love. And I vowed silently that I would spend every day of the rest of my life ensuring that caregivers everywhere, those silent architects of our futures, would finally stand in the spotlight they deserve. And that's the journey, one that reminded me why we dream, who lifts us up, and how small acts of kindness can change worlds. If this story moved you, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel for more behind-the-scenes tales, and hit the bell so you never miss an upload. Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear about the people who shaped your life. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.